Hey guys, welcome to the show. Do you know what the top 10 most commonly asked interview questions are? Well, if not, we're going to go over that today, so stick around. Here at Things You Should Know podcast, our focus varies from commonly asked questions like, what are the top email apps for iPhone users? Or how much does it cost to go to Disney World anyway? To the trending topics of the day, such as, are taxes going up or down? And who's Elon Musk? We shed light on things you probably have always wondered about, but you never got around to investigating them yourself. This podcast brings you the answers to your most commonly asked questions and makes you smarter just by listening. Information empowers, and the more information you have, the better decision you can make, and ultimately, your quality of life is based on the decisions you make. So, thanks for joining the discussion, and make sure that you subscribe today and not miss out on any future episodes of Things You Should Know. Hey guys, welcome to the show. This is Kelly, your host, and I appreciate you joining me each and every week. This is our podcast number 2, and we're going to just kind of jump into some really hopefully helpful information. Well, each podcast, my hope is helpful for you, but because the job market has been what it's been, this is January 2021. Many people are in the job market. And today's conversation is going to talk about the 10 most commonly asked questions while you're on an interview. So obviously, the goal here is to assist you. This is some information that you may not know. So be prepared, of course, when you go for your interview. Now, if you've not done so already, the call to action here is please subscribe. Please subscribe because we're going to be doing podcasts twice a week. And our goal is very simple. We just want to provide you with information that you may not know. And of course, the reason why we say that is information empowers, and being empowered provides you an opportunity to make the best decision. Why is that important? Because your quality of life is based off your ability to make good decisions. So the more information you have, the more empowered you are. The more empowered you are, hopefully you are making better and better decisions. Hence, you are developing and creating for yourself and your family, your loved ones, a great quality of life. So let's get started. Well, here's what I did. I researched 2 of the bigger job boards online. That's Indeed and Monster. And I'm going to bring you, because they were very similar. They were very similar in what they asked their top 10. Monster concentrated on 10, but Indeed did like 100 or so. And I think that's a little silly. No one's asking 100 questions in a job interview, I hope. But in this regard, we're going to talk about the top 10. And the top 10 is an indication of a question that you more than likely will have. Now, take in consideration specific intricacies as it relates to the functionality of a position. For example, if you are going in for a specific technical position, then of course there could be a question asked to you as a coder, a programmer, a technical person that works at AT&T in terms of cable and wiring. We're not talking that detail. We're talking more commonly asked questions as it relates to your ability to add value, immediate value, to the company that you are currently interviewing with. So take that in mind. All right. So what was the top 10? Let's start with number 10. Number 10, and it gets a little obscure, as it goes from 1 to 10, but I think still there is some value. Now, this is from Monster, and they say their number 10 most commonly asked question at a job interview is, if you were an animal, which one would you be? Now, I've been on a few interviews in my life. I've never been asked this question. However, there's data to support that someone somewhere is asking these type of weird questions. And for a number of reasons. So number one, if you are asked this question, don't be caught off guard because it's considered a weird question. Interviewers use this type of psychological question to see if you can think quickly. So it's meant to kind of throw you off. They want to see how you can react to a weird or maybe an unanticipated situation. So for example, if you were to answer this question and say you were a lion, that may demonstrate to the interviewer that you are aggressive. Or let's say you answer this question and say you are a bunny or a chicken or something like that, then that may indicate that you are passive. What you want to think about as quickly as possible is what best describes your personality type and what personality type, most importantly, will fit the job that you're interviewing for. So you don't want to come across as too aggressive or too passive. You want to leave a good impression on the interviewer. So that's number 10. Number 9, what salary are you seeking? Now, I have been asked that, and you're usually asked that all the time. You even ask that before the interview. That's a way to, as a person who has conducted interviews myself and recruited people, that's always a tool that you use in recruiting because you want to ensure that the people that you're getting are in the price range where you can, quite honestly, where you can afford based on the budget for that position. Now, when you're being asked what salary you're seeking, it's to your advantage if the employer tells you the range first. And I've been on the odd side of this where I have worked with a recruiter. I'll give you a personal example. I've worked with a recruiter, and the recruiter had me in a certain job range. This is what this person was telling me as a recruiter. And so when it was time for the offer, they asked me directly what salary I was looking for and so forth and so on, which I thought already was a done deal based on what the recruiter was telling me. So I felt very comfortable giving the numbers that I gave. Well, long story short, the conversation went in a different direction. I decided not to move forward with that opportunity because obviously our intelligence, if you will, on the salary or the salary cap were very, very different. Again, you want the employer to be able to tell you this range because, number one, you don't want to give them a number that's too low. Let's say, for example, they say, okay, what's your salary? And you say, well, 75 for the year, 75 a year. Well, they may have been willing to go, their window could have been 125 to 150. And so, of course, they're not going to tell you that. If you say you're willing to take 75, then that's going to save them money. And then you don't want to overshoot either. You don't want to say a 150 number when in our actuality, the value, the open market value is about 90 or 95. You want to be in that range. One possible answer could be, and one of the things we're going to do as we go through this, I'm going to give you suggestions on how to answer these just so you can take some notes and think of some ways to prepare yourself in the event that you have an interview coming up soon. So what's one of the possible answers, Kelly, to a question like what salary are you seeking? A possible answer is, I'm sure when the time comes, we can agree on a reasonable amount. I'm sure when the time comes, we can agree on a reasonable amount. And also, in what range do you typically pay someone with my background? In what range do you typically pay someone with my background? So that does a few things. Number one, if I'm interviewing a person and they respond that way, they don't give me a number, but they answer my question with a question, I think that person is a thinker. I think this person has thought about this. They prepared themselves to answer it, and they are sharp because they understand what I told you previously. They don't want to undersell themselves, and they don't want to oversell. And they want me to provide them with the answer, which is completely okay. So that question I know you're going to get. Question 8. What are the 3 positive things your last employer, last boss, your last manager would say about you? You're going to get this in some form or fashion because they're trying to get an indication of your personality, of who you are. You're bringing your best self into the job interview. And in many cases, that person may or may not show up at the job if they're hired. I've seen that many times. I don't care if it's a job interview or interview trying to get into an organization or on a board. People present the best parts of themselves. I don't care whether it's a dating situation. If you meet someone out, they're not going to tell you they were recently arrested and they've got a court date tomorrow. That's because it's not attractive. That's not something that's going to bring someone closer to you. That's something that's going to make somebody shy away from you. Someone shy away from you. So in a job interview setting, you're going to show up, I hope, looking your best, smelling your best, very well groomed. You're going to present yourself in the best light. And they expect, the employer, the interviewers expect for you to say the best things about yourself. It would be asinine not to. But they also want to know what other people would say about you because they're going to ask potentially these other people. And it should be congruent. It should match up. What you want to do is pull out your old performance appraisals, and maybe if you've talked to your boss before, he knows you're going in for this. Let's say it's an intercompany interview. And so it's completely appropriate for your manager, your boss, your director to know that you're interviewing for another job within the company. Okay, so if you're moving up from the third floor to the fourth floor and manager on the fourth floor is interviewing you, he could very well call down to his counterpart in the third floor and say, hey, how's Kelly in difficult situations? And if he says he tends to be erratic and unprofessional, then that's not going to bode well for me. So what would my previous manager or boss say? Now, here's another thing I'll throw in here as it relates to contacting your current employer. Many times, my personal thoughts on that, if I'm interviewing intercompany, is fine. But if I'm anticipating leaving a company to go somewhere else, you kind of want to keep that on a classified level, unless you're very, very comfortable with, very, very confident with what you're doing. I would say if I'm doing this, I do not allow the company I'm interviewing with to reach out to my current company. Why? Because it could create problems where I currently am. You don't want to put yourself in limbo. You want to be able to be the lead on this. You want to be able the person to give a 2 weeks notice and not to be given a 2 weeks notice. So keep that in mind. But what are three positive things that your last boss would, say about you? What are three positive things that your last boss has actually said? That's the answer. What are three positive things that he or she has actually said? This is a great way to brag about yourself through another person's words. So you don't seem self-indulgent. You do not seem like you are being braggadocious, but you can use the other person and speak about yourself in third person and really demonstrate some of the finer qualities that you have, and always gear those qualities toward that particular function. So let's say, for example, if you are a business development manager for a company, and now you're seeking to be a director of business development at a different company or the same, it doesn't really matter. If your boss has said, man, you really know how to work with people. You're really good with our customers. You're really excellent when it comes to communication. When it comes to sales, all those things are important. Think about it. Do you want a sales rep calling on you that has a bad attitude or that's difficult to talk to or hard to get in touch with? Business development, one of the keys is being a people person. So that's just an example. If you're a good technician, you can talk about the detail in terms of your work, your focus, your ability to not make mistakes, because from a technical side, from a numeric side, numbers are important. Numbers is not a soft skill. It's black or white. Either it is right or wrong. Coding, similarly, although I'm not a coder, my son is, so I know a little bit about that. So these are some examples and some ways for you to answer that particular question. Let's go on to number 7. You'll get this in some form or fashion. What can you bring for us? What can you do for us? How can you add value for us that other candidates cannot? What can you do, quite honestly, that the folks that we're going to be interviewing before you or after you cannot? You want to emphasize what makes you unique when you're asked this question. What can you do for us that other candidates can't? This will take an assessment of your experiences, your skills, and your traits. You want to summarize them concisely. For example, I have a unique combination of this. Here's an example. I have a unique combination of strong technical skills and the ability to build strong customer relations. Now, in my experience, most technical people don't necessarily have that. Technical people tend to work in small groups, people who they're familiar with, or they may work alone and they are managing things, but they're managing processes. They're not managing groups. That's my experience. I'm not saying every technical person is isolated by no regard, but let's say you are a technical person and you also have great customer skills. Well, awesome. Offer that up. Offer that up. What I would say, I normally combine my work experience along with my educational background and some skill set that I have that stands out, that may be obvious. My ability to communicate clearly. My extensive past performance or work background in a particular industry. If you've got a certain number of years, particularly north of 10 years in a certain industry, I think you should always talk about that. If you have a really robust education, academic background, particularly in a particular area, let's say if it's you're going for a administrative job in an educational environment, you're moving from being a teacher into an admin area, and you have a master's degree and you're working on your PhD or you have your PhD, of course, talk about your education if you're going to be a high-level educator or an administrator. So that's the way I would answer that. So number 6, when were you most satisfied in your last job? When were you most satisfied? The interviewer may ask this. When were you most satisfied? He wants to know what motivates you, how to manage you, should you come on board. If you can relate an example of an experience, of a job experience or a project that you recently worked on that excited you, that made you really want to get up and come to work that day, the interviewer will get an idea of your preferences. Do you like to work in groups? Do you like to work alone? Do you like difficult tasks? Do you like to multitask? Or are you more of a single focus type individual? A way to answer this question, I was very satisfied in my last job when I worked directly with the customers and their problems. That's an important part of the job for me. So let's say if you want to be the manager of Best Buy or you want to be a retail manager of Kohl's or someone like that. Well, I can tell you from working retail, I worked retail for about 5 years when I was in college. And I was a manager, and the big part of your day is solving problems for people that you will just have met that day. And it is an array of problems. It can be, clothing didn't fit, shoes were we used to sell shoes where I worked, and you would be surprised the number of problems that you would have with a pair of shoes, from the soles coming off to people buying the wrong size but having worn them, now they want to bring them back. They would literally get home and the shoes that they tried on in the store were different sizes. They didn't check them leaving the store. There's a number of things. So where were you most satisfied in your last job? And if you are that people person, I would certainly stress that and talk about your ability to basically make friends while you're working and benefit the company by being that friendly manager and being able to problem solve for the customers. All right, so now we're getting into the meat of it, our top 5. Number 5 is, why did you leave, or why are you desiring to leave your current position, your current job? This is one of the most commonly asked interview questions. What you don't want to do is badmouth your former employer. You don't want to do that, especially if you've given this current potential employer the okay to contact them. which again, I would not do. If the interviewer asks this, why did you leave or why are you seeking to leave? And you're unemployed, state your reason for leaving in a positive context. So you either left the last position or you were asked to leave. You're currently unemployed and you're seeking employment. So state what happened, but put the most positive spin on it possible. Now listen, if you literally got in an altercation with a coworker or a manager, I think you want to share that because they're going to find that out irregardless. And now if you don't bring that up and they find it out, you're going to be completely dismissed as a potential candidate. But hopefully you don't have that. Usually people leave because they're unsatisfied with work conditions, salary. Maybe it was too far. It's too far to drive every day. Given the conditions in the last year or so with the pandemic, I didn't feel comfortable going into an office. These sorts of things. That's very viable. That's very viable. So make sure that you use rationale that way. An example is I managed to survive 2 rounds of corporate downsizing, but the third round was a 20% reduction in the workforce, which included me. And many of us who've been in corporate for any time, we've all had water fountain talk. We've all been involved with downsizing and cutbacks and things like that. And that is very viable because the person that is interviewing you is also a part of a corporation, and they've also had to more than likely sidestep some of these reductions and things like that. So they understand. They understand. They just want to hear it from you. If you are employed, you currently have a job, but you're seeking another one. Why are you leaving? Focus on what you want in your next job. This is very key. Perhaps you're not getting something where you currently are and you're seeking that. And that's perfectly fine. Example of an answer. After 2 years, I made the decision to look for a company that is team focused, team oriented, where I can add my experience. There's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't say anything salacious about the company that you're currently working for. What it says is that you're an aspiring person. You're looking to expand. You're looking to grow. That's perfectly fine. Number 4, what are your goals? You will get this question for sure. What are your aspirations? If you do come aboard, what I would like to know, if I'm hiring you, what is it? Okay, I'm going to bring you in, but what is it that you're going to do? This particular position, I don't expect you to be here all the time. What is that you want to do? And what are your goals? How are you looking to grow? When you're asked this question, what are your goals? Sometimes it's best to talk about the short-term and intermediate goals rather than locking yourself into a distant future, which possibly could change. For example, here's a potential answer. My immediate goal is to get a job in a growth-oriented company. My long-term goal will depend on whether the company or where the company goes. I hope to eventually grow in a position of responsibility. So that's specific enough to talk about your vision. I like a position of growth. I like a company that is growing. I like to have more responsibility. Nothing wrong with that. But also doesn't lock you into anything. So the question was, what are your goals? And those are some examples on how to answer them. Now we're down to the top 3 questions that were asked according to Monster.com, one of the largest job board platforms that we have. And let me just tell you, things you should know is not sponsored by Monster or any of the content that we bring on here, or at least not yet. I'm sharing this information with you just because I think it could help you. And I want you to listen to this podcast. That is my agenda. That is it. Question number 3. Why do you want to work here? Why? Of all the places that you could work, this is the insinuation. Why do you want to work here? I've been asked that a number of times. So what's happening when you're being asked this question? The interviewer is listening for an answer that indicates you've given this some thought, and you're not just sending out resumes blindly, and you're not just responding to whoever asked you to come in for an interview first. Okay? I think you know that they know that you just didn't send them an application or a resume, right? If you're looking for a position, if it is in retail, there are a number of retail organizations out there, and they know that you could have applied at multiple places. So what is it about this retail organization that is different than retail B, C, and D? That's what they want to know. Have you done some background? Have you done any work at all? Or are you just simply looking to jump, from place to place? What are some examples, some ways to answer this question intelligently? Well, I've selected key companies whose mission statements are in line with my values, where I know I could be excited about the company, what the company does, and this company is very high on my list of desirable choices. So you're complimenting the company. You're talking about value systems. You're doing a lot in this particular response. I'll say it again. I've selected key companies whose mission statements are in line with my values. That says a lot about you. If someone tells me that, you've mentioned keywords here, mission statements, which every company has or should have, and it's easy to find a company's mission statement. All you have to do is go to their website and look at their About Us. They should have a vision and a mission statement. Okay, as a person, a candidate, if you've done that, especially if you can tell them what their own mission statement is, I guarantee you very few other candidates are doing that. Lastly, you're talking about your values. You say, hey, guys, your mission statement, when it says, we believe in providing our customer with 100% satisfaction, that's in alignment with my values. That's in alignment with what I believe. That's why I want to work here. It's because I believe, based on what you guys said in your mission, that we are a good fit. And I guarantee you will impress the interviewer. Question number 2. And this one is coming. Why? Why should we hire you? Why should we hire you? Here's how you want to answer that question. You want to begin by summarizing your experiences. Here's an example. With 5 years experience working in the financial industry and my proven record of saving the company money, I could make a difference in your company. I'm confident I'd be a great addition to your team. I would kind of bring this in a little more. And here's what I would tell you. Here's why I like that response. Because you're talking about yourself, you're talking your qualifications up, but you're only saying what you can do for them. You're not mentioning anything, obviously, that they can do for you. Don't answer this question the other way around, because then that would seem like you're a parasite and a taker and not a giver. And I've heard people answer it, I need a job. I'd like, to have a bigger salary. I'd like to be able to do, well, the company is not interested in your interest of getting a bigger salary. They're interested in only one thing. What can you do for them? And quite honestly, they're interested in knowing what you can do for them immediately. And the term and the phrases that have been using today is how can you, and you want to remember this, because an interviewer, a good manager, and a good good interviewer will understand this lingo. Here's what you want to say to them. I believe that I can add immediate value to XYZ company by, and then you go into your experience. My proven background, my work experience, my education, I can bring immediate value to your company. In other words, there's very short learning curve. You don't have to spend a lot of money on me, training and these sorts of things. I know how to do this stuff. So I can bring immediate value. And I'll tell you why. In your dresses division, I've noticed, that there's maybe a downturn in teenagers wearing dresses or something like that. I understand this market, and here's a potential plan I could bring immediately to bring you additional revenue. I mean, I know how to do this. So the question is, why should I hire you? And you will certainly hear that question. Now, here's a number one. And actually, I would have listed why should I hire you first, because you know you're going to hear that. But number one is curious, and it is this. What are your weaknesses? What are your weaknesses? If you're being asked what are your weaknesses, one of the most important things to remember is it's a dreaded question also. A lot of people don't know how to handle it because they don't know exactly what to say. If you are not aware that this question is going to be asked, unfortunately, many people actually go into actually what their weaknesses are, and that's not the way you want to approach this. You want to stay away from personal qualities, personal flaws. Personal qualities, personal flaws, and you want to concentrate on professional traits. When someone says what your weakness is, they don't want to know that you have a proclivity for alcohol or these sorts of things. Concentrate on professional traits. For example, I'm always working on improving my communication skills to be a more effective presenter. I recently joined Toastmasters, which is very helpful. It's helping me. Now, here's a very clever way of answering that and using a particular skill set that a lot of people, professional and otherwise, don't honestly, they don't have. I have had to give public presentations and things like that since I was in high school, and it got easier with time. But I'm a part of a number of civic and regional organizations where that is a requirement. And many times I still see people who have difficulty speaking in front of groups. This is why Toastmasters, quite honestly, is of value because many professionals do attend Toastmasters to increase their skill sets and become better presenters, more effective presenters. Just because you can also stand in a group and talk doesn't mean you're being effective either. Let me just be clear there. I don't want to get too far offline. But I like this answer because it speaks to a trait that many people, I would say about 60-40 professionals either have or don't have. And it's realistic. It's something that is factually, stable, I would say. I think you could probably research this and see that Toastmasters is a viable organization. Many people have heard of Toastmasters and they understand the value of Toastmasters. And the other thing on top of that is you're kind of, touting yourself saying, hey, I'm a member of Toastmasters. This is something that is outside of, the qualification that you listed on the scope or the requirements for this position, but I'm a member of Toastmasters. And that's the way to work that in. So again, this question is the number one question that's been asked according to Monster, and that is, what are your weaknesses? Now, this question can be asked in a few different ways, so don't be confused. Answer it the same way. They could get into, if you had to change something about yourself, what would it be? What are your top things that you don't like about yourself? These sorts of things. It's all the same question. What are your weaknesses? And you want to not concentrate on personal qualities. You want to always approach this from a professional trait manner, professionalism. What are some of the things that are personal? Personal could be your proclivities for, pornography or alcoholism. God forbid you don't want to tell people you take an hour a day to watch porn. If you do, that's your deal. Who cares? But you don't want to share that with your potential employer. Keep it professional. What are professional traits? Professional traits are effective communication, ability to problem solve, your ability to focus and your dependability in terms of showing up each day timely and these sorts of things. You want to keep it in that arena. Okay? All right, guys. So I hope you have learned something today. And best of luck for everyone who's listened to this. And there's been some value here for you to go out and really strategize on what's coming for you here in 2021. I'm eternally optimistic. I always am. I feel really good about 2021. And I hope you guys, if you are heading out of the door to go on these interviews or heading downstairs to get in front of your Zoom to interview, either way, always be prepared. Take this information and use it. And good luck to you. And you haven't done so already, please share, like, and subscribe to Things You Should Know podcast. And we will talk to you soon.